Hi there, and I am reading your integrated writing practice test right now. You're one of my students in the English language program here at California State University, San Bernardino. So you read a reading passage about social networks, then the lecture disagrees with a lot of those ideas. I just read through your essay, so I think on this one, I'm going to give you 2.5 out of 5, 17 points out of 30. So if we go to the internet and take a look at it here, I think that you're either leaving out information or you're not showing exactly what the connection is between the information in the reading and the information from the lecture. You also have some language errors in there, and these things are causing some problems with your writing. So what I want to do now is let's take a look. On the left, here is your essay. On the right, here's the reading passage and also the lecture. Right? So you say the reading passage explains social networks that created for socializing. You want to say here that are created for socializing but actually interrupt by giving 3 negative effects. I would say here, if you want to change this, the reading passage explains 3 disadvantages So the reading passage explains 3 disadvantages of social networks and maybe the speaker in the listening passage maybe you can put it's not just give instances for each point. No, the speaker in the lecture clearly disagrees with these ideas because the reading is saying here social networks are a false sense of community and friendships because they take away face-to-face interaction. They create a false sense of friendship, and many users end up addicted, right? So I'm saying reading passage explains 3 disadvantages of social networks, and the speaker in the listening passage, you can maybe say cast doubt on each of these points, something like that. So now you're showing how the speaker in the lecture disagrees with all these disadvantages that are mentioned, right? Now, as you look at the thesis here, the overall idea is that social networks create a false sense of community and friendships because here's where you want to focus. They take away face-to-face interaction. That would be reading point number 1. Number 2, reading point 2, they create a false sense of friendship. And then reading point 3, many users end up addicted, right? So I don't even think you need to worry about this too much. You can put that in the introduction if you want. So social networks, you're saying people don't need to meet in person and stop spending time. You want to say social networks prevent people from having the necessary face-to-face communication that they need, you might say. So first, according to the reading passage, social networks prevent people from having the necessary face-to-face communication that they need. People don't You might want to say, for example, if you want. People do not meet in person. So they are not, you could probably put this, are not spending time with each other because of social networks. And then you might say asserts the author in the reading passage. Okay, so I think we have enough here. So first, according to the reading passage, social networks prevent people from having the necessary face-to-face communication that they need. For example, people do not meet in person, so they're not spending time with each other because of social networks, asserts the author in the reading passage. So that's probably what you'd have to say there. Now we have to show how the listening passage disagrees with this information. Okay, so the key here, here's where you want to do a little bit better is once you get to that speaker, right, you say something like, on the other hand, because the speaker is saying that traditional places of where to meet have changed because of the internet. It's saying that we don't have to meet face-to-face all the time, right? So you might say the speaker downplays the need for in-person social interaction. We might say since people and let's look at what it says here. We'll look into the so traditional places have changed. So we have the internet is here. We wrote letters to pen pals in the past, right? So it's saying along with traditional ways of making friends, social networks are simply another way to make friends in a modern technological society. So the speaker downplays the need for in-person social interaction since in the past we might put people used to be pen pal friends we might say. All right, so let's keep going. So I put the on the other hand in there to show how the lecture is different. So the speaker downplays the need for in-person social interaction since in the past people used to be pen pal friends. Which did not require meeting in person. So maybe we can get rid of this here. Let's go back. So it's saying that naturally bad with social networks since they in a modern world. I think we have it. So part of it, you just didn't develop. You didn't develop your point enough so that we could understand what was a relationship or what is a relationship between the reading passage and the lecture. So this is the change I made to this paragraph. So first, according to the reading passage, social networks prevent people from having the necessary face-to-face communication that they need. For example, people do not meet in person, so they're not spending time with each other because of social networks, asserts the author in the reading passage. On the other hand, the speaker downplays the need for in-person social interaction since in the past, people used to be pen pal friends, which did not require meeting in person. According to the speaker, there's nothing naturally bad with social networks since they are a new way for people to meet in the modern world. Okay, so here, if you look at this, it says you have the writer states here that social networks changed meaning, friendship meaning negatively. But if you look here, it says the definition of friendship has changed negatively. Social networks, what if you say have cast a negative shadow on friendships. In the past, friendship is built over time, but in modern life, if you look in here, how about friendships? How about this? Should be built. If you say in the they have cast a negative shadow on friendships which should be built over time. And I would put that but or however, I would put that when you get to the information in the lecture because that's a key juncture. You want to show how it's different. You might say nowadays people send digital requests. Digital requests for friendship acceptances. This is your key juncture here, right? So for example is not the right word. That you don't want to do that because if you look at the information in the lecture, it's saying that these things are not naturally bad. It's saying that the user's getting to know a friend by following a friend in much the same way that pen pals and other people, try to communicate. So I don't think that the speaker sees anything wrong with this. I'm going to change this because pen pal is mentioned in the third paragraph, not the second. So people used to send letters to each other, maybe, which did not require meeting in person. Okay, let's go back here. In contrast, that people should have to meet in order to become friends. So you say the speaker describes his personal experience using pen pals with his friends. Okay, let's see. This is good. This is very good. I like what you said here. I'm going to say to support this idea, the speaker describes his personal experience, maybe. You need to put in which he used the pen pal system to communicate with his friends. When the speaker was young. I wouldn't say however, I would say similarly. The purpose here is to not show a contrast, but to show how the pen pal system is similar to the social network system. That's what the speaker is trying to say. So similarly, people all around the world use social networks as a way to communicate with each other. Let's take a look at this next paragraph one more time. So second, the writer states that social networks have cast a negative shadow on friendships which should be built over time. In fact, according to the writer, nowadays people send digital requests for friendship acceptances. In contrast, the speaker does not agree that people should have to meet in order to become friends. To support this idea, the speaker describes his personal experience in which he used the pen pal system to communicate with his friends traditionally when the speaker was young. Similarly, people all around the world use social networks as a way to communicate with each other. That's good. So we have last, the writer illustrates that social networks create obsession, maybe, and addiction, much like users maybe of video games. Okay, we have it. And then we have the next idea here. Where is it? I'm going to the third point here. In fact, the author contends that social networks are becoming the dominant, you might want to say, I would say dominant here, dominant activity many people's lives, we might say. Then we have this. This is where you're running into trouble. The speaker in the lecture is not just adding to what was said. The speaker is disagreeing with what was said. That's why the word furthermore here, it's not the right word. So, however, the speaker asserts if we look at it here, it says online networks are the new norm, then addicted to social networks may not carry as much weight. It says addiction can be redefined as routine or habitual because social networks are now part of the social norm. So the speaker asserts part of what is considered normal so they should not be seen as addictive. Then you can say something like, indeed. This is where you can also improve on. And here's my recommendation. You need to connect sentences together better by using transition words. And different kinds of transition words create certain types of emphasis. For example, if I say indeed, I'm using that to introduce an important point, right? If I say however, I'm trying to show how this information is different from what came before. Notice how I'm putting words in there like in fact, however, indeed. So you do use transition words sometimes, but you're still not making all those required connections. So take a look at, I think it's speaking lesson number 7. That's a really good lesson for you right now. Okay, so here we have indeed. We could say something like this maybe. Everyone, even politicians, uses social networks technological maybe innovations in our society we can probably say How about therefore? And I think that probably gets the most important thing there. All right, let's take a look at this paragraph. So I just check over here and I look and I see what's in the reading and the listening. I've had to add information in different areas here. So let's go one more time with this one. Last, the writer illustrates that social networks create maybe addiction and obsession, much like users of video games. In fact, the author contends that social networks are becoming the dominant activity today in many people's lives. However, the speaker asserts that social networks are part of what is considered normal, so they should not be seen as addictive. Indeed, everyone, even politicians, uses social networks since these are technological innovations in our society. Therefore, people using using these social media should maybe not be viewed as being addicts or as being repressed in any way. Right? So then, if you want to end it, if you want to have a conclusion, I'm not saying you have to, but you could say something like, in conclusion, you might say, so the effectiveness, you might say, of social networks in our society. That might be just a short conclusion. Okay, let's take a look at it one more time here. And I think we're just about done. Let's do a quick spell check. Okay, let's see how many words. I did have to develop your ideas a little bit more. So 347. Okay, here we go. Let's take a look. The reading passage explains 3 disadvantages of social networks, and the speaker in the listening passage casts doubt on each of these points. First, according to the reading passage, social networks prevent people from having the necessary face-to-face communication that they need. For example, people do not meet in person, so they're not spending time with each other because of social networks, asserts the author in the reading passage. On the other hand, the speaker downplays the need for in-person social interaction, since in the past people used to send letters to each other, which did not require meeting in person. According to the speaker, there is nothing naturally bad with social networks, since they're a new way for people to meet in a modern world. We got it. Second, the writer states that social networks have cast a negative shadow on friendships which should be built over time. In fact, according to the writer, nowadays people send digital requests for friendship acceptances. In contrast, the speaker does not agree that people should have to meet in order to become friends. To support this idea, the speaker describes his personal experience in which he used the pen pal system to communicate with his friends traditionally when the speaker was young. Similarly, people all around the world use social networks as a way to communicate with each other. Last, The writer illustrates that social networks create addiction and obsession, much like users of video games. In fact, the author contends that social networks are becoming the dominant activity today in many people's lives. However, the speaker asserts that social networks are part of what is considered normal, so they should not be seen as addictive. Indeed, everyone, even politicians, uses social networks since these are technological innovations in our society. Therefore, people using these social media should not be viewed as being addicts or as being repressed in any way. In conclusion, the reading and the listening passage have differing views about the effectiveness of social networks in our society. And there it is. So the main thing, I think, is you did not really demonstrate how the information in the lecture is connected, so you weren't able to show the contrast. That's why I changed most of your transition words to however, on the other hand, or in contrast. You had things like for example, but that did not show how the listening was different from the information in the reading. So that's kind of a key thing. So in terms of comparing and contrasting ideas, you want to make sure you can show that type of relationship. And that's one of the reasons why I did what I scored your essay in the way that I did. So what do we have here? Yours was 2.5 out of 5. So I rewrote it to show you how you can get a perfect 5.5 out of 5 on this particular practice test, and that's how you would do it. It looks like it's a lot, but it really isn't. So if I change this to 12-point font, this is what it looks like. And then if you change it, of course, to single space, it's even shorter. All right, anyway, thank you very much for completing this practice test.